a real honor to be here today. I have to say I was very surprised to get a call to be invited to speak at Occupy Kochtown. Not only because I live in Iowa, but because I work in food and agriculture. Food Democracy Now! Is a grassroots organization. We're now 300,000 American farmers and citizens dedicated to reforming food and agricultural policy. One of the main problems we have, just like environmentalism and you have with Keystone, is we're up against a lot of corporate power. And corporate power dominates our political process here in the United States. Here in Kansas, the famous Koch brothers have really made a name for themselves, and Kansas, I think, recently. But here, I'm from Iowa. And Iowa is really one of the most industrialized food systems and agriculture on the planet. I just want to say a special recognition to my friend Donna Buell. Please raise your hand. I have to say, I've had the pleasure of working and knowing Donna for 5.5, almost 6 years now. And she was one of the absolute first people I met when I moved back to Iowa. I moved back a little over 5.5 years ago to fight a factory farm half a mile from my sister's farm. And Donna was the town environmentalist. She's a lawyer. She knew all the rules. She knew what we're up against. And, you know, everyone went to her for advice. And it's an honor to stand here today with her in an Occupy Movement event. And she is now on the board of the Sierra Club, the National Sierra Club. And it's really just a phenomenal statement of the fact that if you follow your passion, you follow what you care about, you never know where you're going to end up. I haven't seen Donna for over a year at least, and I've been meeting every time I go to my parents' home to connect with her. So it's great that our work, standing up to corporate power and for the environment, brings us together. You know, I would just say I wrote a speech down real quickly because I know that I have a tendency to ramble. I know I only have 20 minutes to speak. Last week I spoke for 2 hours at Yale, and I didn't realize that I could actually talk for that long and remain coherent. I think the latter part of that sentence was not for me to judge, but I did okay. But, you know, there's a lot of, I'll just say, I'm a former conservative Republican. Probably a lot of people grew up in conservative Republican families. You know, protesting and going to rallies is not my thing. I never thought I would do that. I was a former editor of the Dartmouth Review, which is a very conservative college newspaper. Worked at American Enterprise Institute after I graduated from college. But, you know, I saw the light, and for the past 12 years I've been a progressive Democrat. I have to say the only problem with being a progressive Democrat is, you know, I no longer have to be ashamed of being a Republican. I just have to be embarrassed by the fact that our Democrats who we elect to public office don't have the spine to stand up and do what they said they're going to do. You know, I don't want to go into some of my disappointments with our current administration, but I guess I will be doing those. You know, one of the things I've learned in these past 5 years is absolutely vital that we stand together as a united force against corporate power. They have all the money. They have all the access to Congress. Food Democracy Now! Is a grassroots organization that started out on a laptop in Iowa and a cell phone. And that's all it was. And we said we'd had enough. We're not going to take it anymore. You know, Iowa legislators, you can pass all these bad bills, you can destroy our environment, but we're going to expose you. And we've always felt that the truth is a very powerful thing. And today we're here to protest the Keystone pipeline. You know, I think it's a travesty for a number of reasons, all of which you know better than I do. But the other part of the environmental movement and the awakening that needs to take place is the fact that the food that appears on your plate has as much, if not more, of an impact on the environment and our planet and our ecosystem than this pipeline. Now, the pipeline is a disaster. As Jane Hansen has said, it's game over. But I would also say that if you don't recognize the importance of what you're eating and how it impacts the environment around you and the individuals that are family farmers in your community, and the need for the importance of small family farmers, I think that I know this audience is probably one of the most brightest and dedicated groups out there, so I would certainly believe that you're capable of learning it. But you know, One of the things I was always very surprised at in the 2007 caucus, I would get together with my environmental friends, and invariably they're eating hot dogs and factory farm meat. And in Iowa, we're surrounded by monocultures, and we're the #1 hog producer, so we have hog confinements wall to wall in that state. One of the things I'll just read these 2 sentences real quickly. Barack Obama's refusal to take a strong stand on stopping the Keystone Pipestone only emboldens our opponents, who seek to carve up America's natural resources for their own enrichment, putting corporate power over the health and well-being of the fellow citizens and our common environment. I think it's a sad statement for our current affairs that the famous Cree Indian proverb, "Only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned and the last fish has been caught, will we realize that we cannot eat money." When these words were spoken in the 1800s, it was unimaginable that the great bounty of our nation could ever be lost, that we would ever lose the ability to go out and hunt, fish, hunt wild animals from our back door and eat fish, go fishing in the river. Today in Iowa, it's a health risk to go to a river and eat those fish. I certainly would not advise that. Today we know the dangers that come from polluting our environment and due to the influence of corporate agribusiness. Iowa's rivers and streams are among the most polluted in the nation, contributing to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico and regularly leading to blue baby alerts in Des Moines, Des Moines has the world's largest nitration filtration system on the planet, leading more than one Iowa farmer, Midwestern farmer, to realize that today's industrial system of agriculture, we are literally poisoning ourselves and the environment to feed ourselves. Clearly, this is not a system that can go on indefinitely and without causing irreparable harm. I just want to talk really quickly about the importance of the family farmer. We're here in the Midwest. We understand the value of these small towns and small town businesses. They're our neighbors, they're our brothers, they're our cousins, they're our friends. Nothing more has, in the last 30 years, has worked against this than the refusal for all administrations to enforce antitrust legislation. Since Reagan, most administrations have refused even to look into or investigate. Remarkably, under Barack Obama, President Obama, they held a year-long series of investigations into the antitrust potential abuses of food and agriculture sector. The food and agriculture sector is one of the most dominated agricultural sectors in our economy. 84% of beef is controlled by 4 processors and 66% of pork. And they say any industry that is dominated by 4 or less companies at a rate of 40% or greater is an absolute monopoly. So today we have family farmers that cannot get a fair price in the marketplace for their livestock, and they are often put up against grain companies that will short them in the market. I just want to say, much of what we do at Food Democracy Now! Is trying to get policies to protect family farmers and not harm them. We fundamentally believe that if you want a sound democracy, much like Thomas Jefferson said, you must have independent land ownership. Now, Jefferson was a plantation owner and he owned slaves, but he did fundamentally understand that the value of having individual ownership of land. Today, our farmers are becoming serfs on that land. They are in livestock production. They hold all the risk. They'll have to put up $1.5 million for 2 hog confinement buildings, and the corporation gets all the profit from the pigs. And they absolutely have to follow those contract schedules put forward to them by these companies. If they don't, they will lose their contracts and lose their farm. Remarkably, agriculture was the backbone of the United States for centuries. In 1862, when Abraham Lincoln founded the Department of Agriculture, 50% of Americans were farmers. However, since 1960, when John F. Kennedy was elected, America has lost 1.7 million family farmers. As we know, living in the Midwest, these are the backbone of rural economies. And today, remarkably, the number of farmers is outnumbered by prisoners. One of the major problems we've talked about is livestock production. Since Ronald Reagan was elected, the refusal to enforce antitrust investigation, more than 1.1 million independent livestock producers exist today. That means they can produce as much meat as all those farmers that used to be out in the land, but these are animals that are caged in factory farms. That is an absolute travesty for our environment. It is an absolute travesty for those animals, and for the inhumanity those animals suffer. But more importantly, it is a travesty for our democracy. When we have stood by and watched it happen, our elected officials have helped it happen. We have a Secretary of Agriculture who voted for it as a state senator, then helped it instill that process as a governor, and now as Secretary of Agriculture. I like Tom Vilsack, Secretary Vilsack, but currently we're supporting the wrong system. Now I want to talk real quickly, food and agriculture. There was a real important opportunity that President Obama, this administration, could have followed through on a campaign promise that would have protected family farmers. It was called GIPSA, or it's for the Grain Inspection Packers and Stockyard Act, or Stockyard Administration, the agency under which the USDA is enforced. These were remarkably solid protections for family farmers to protect them against the abuses of corporate power, of packers, and selling their animals into the marketplace. Remarkably, the battle in GIPSA was won by the small farmer and the mid-sized farm and rancher, and it had been a 20-year battle. They won it in the 2008 year Farm Bill, and they had to have the USDA write strong guidelines. The USDA remarkably wrote the strongest guidelines they could. They were advised to. Secretary Vilsack stood very strong in that. And remarkably, much to our regret, much to a lot of my farmer friends' regret, the White House caved on these strong, fair market livestock protections because they did not believe they had the political will, the political calculation to stand up against the meat industry in an election year. This means that we could in 10 years no longer have independent family-owned livestock production. For me, I say this is a crime. And I think this is a crime against our democracy. For our elected officials to sacrifice family farmers and our environment because they're afraid to stand up for them. And it's a sad day, I believe, in America when we have to gather in rooms like this time and time and time again. I've done it for 6 years. I know people in this room have done it for 20 and 30 years. Why do our elected officials not listen to us? Why do they constantly put agribusiness and corporations over the will and the health and the safety of the American people? I want to talk, remarkably, I love the Occupy movement. I know that it's gotten a lot of criticism from various segments of the mainstream media and from Fox News in particular. I hear that the Koch brothers are entirely scared that they might be overrun by a bunch of, I don't even know what to call us, a ragtag army of believers in the idea of democracy. But somehow we are deemed crazy. Somehow the idea that our rivers and streams shouldn't be polluted puts us on the fringe. Somehow the idea that a farmer should earn a fair income and not be screwed over by a corporation puts you on the fringe. And it means that you can't get invited into those important meetings with senators and senators' staffs and the USDA where you can make a case for why the family farmer is important to the backbone of democracy. The one thing is, Barack Obama, Secretary Vilsack, and every senator in the United States, every congressman, will walk around and give you empty platitudes about how important these farmers are. They'll give you some more empty rhetoric about how important the environment is. We're going to stand up for it. Every time it gets sacrificed on the voting floor in Congress. I mean, people in this room probably we lost the climate bill in 2009. A travesty when you have a Democratic House and Senate and a Democratic President. When will they stand up? I mean, does the world have to start on fire before they're going to do anything? In closing, I just want to talk about the other thing in agriculture that we're working on right now. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor to travel to New York City and participate in a lawsuit which Food Democracy Now! Co-plaintiff. Thank you very much. We're a co-plaintiff with 82 other individuals, family farmers and seed growers and some other nonprofits. And we are obviously, surprisingly, I find myself battling one of the most powerful companies on the planet. Certainly 5.5 years ago, returning to Iowa, that wasn't going to be the trajectory, but here we are. So the lawsuit is Organic Seed Growers and Trade Association against Monsanto. Family farmers, these are organic, biodynamic, and conventional farmers that want to grow their food in a way that is not contaminated by Monsanto. Monsanto, for those who don't know, is a very large, or the world's largest, biotech seed and chemical giant. They sell genetically engineered seeds, and the problem is they absolutely act like the mafia. Their seeds, pollen, and seed will blow across the farmer's fence, and they will contaminate their neighbor's field or a neighbor down the road. The problem is if the farmer saves those seeds, like they have done for 10 to 12,000 years. Farmers save seeds. That's how we get our food. That's how we've gotten our food before 1996. So these farmers now have their patents in their patented genes in their fields. So Monsanto seed police will come along, sneak into their fields, take cuttings of them, and go off to a laboratory and come back and bring them to court for patent infringements. I have to say, this is some Orwellian world we're living in, when a farmer can plant food and grow food and through no fault of his own, a company's poorly designed, what they call a technology product, can contaminate his fields and threaten our food supply. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we went to court. It was a remarkable experience to stand with farmers. These are some of the most brave and decent people I've ever met in my life. I would encourage, we have 2 videos up on our website that I hope that everyone will get a chance. It's fooddemocracynow.org. It's a chance to see. One is Occupy Wall Street Farmers March. We brought a farmer, Jim Garrettson from Maine. He's an organic potato grower. He's the lead plaintiff in this lawsuit. He's the president of SCADA. And Jim is a remarkable human being. We called him right before Thanksgiving. He says, "Oh, I don't know. You're asking me to go to New York City. I've never been to New York City." He's like, "That's like asking me to go to Mars." I'm like, anyway, he went up there. He gave a remarkable speech in front of 300, 400 people. And I would have to say that life on Mars would be greatly improved if farmers like Jim Garrettson would go there. But, just 2 weeks ago, we returned to New York City. We went to court. It's not an easy battle going up against Monsanto. Their lawyers are not nice. They're not friendly. They're very aggressive. Afterwards, Occupy Wall Street Food Justice Working Group, we had a citizens' assembly where farmers would have a chance to share their stories with the people of New York City and with the Occupy movement. I think it was an absolutely beautiful moment to be there with them. And we just released a video yesterday about that. One of the major problems is if you're eating food today, processed food, one of the things is you will not understand that you are already in service to Monsanto. Every bite you take, every piece of cotton clothing that you're wearing, that's not organic, is made and owned by Monsanto. So roughly they own, there's 5 major commodity crops here in the U.S. Corn, soybeans, cotton, sugar beets, and canola. Those products those patented genetically engineered foods are in roughly 75 to 80% of the food in the United States. In reality, Monsanto is the Koch brothers and the Goldman Sachs of agriculture. They have no interest in protecting family farmers. They have no interest in feeding the world, feeding the hungry. What they want is to sell their products, as much of them as they can, and they don't care how many farmers they have to bully, they don't care how many farmers they have to intimidate. There's some really, really painful facts. And as part of this lawsuit, 144 farmers in the U.S. have already been sued between 1997 and 2010. Another 700 were investigated and would have been brought to court, but they realized, oh my God, I can't take on the most powerful company in the world. So they folded because they recognized, I've got to save my own livelihood, I've got to save my farm. And they're now under a gag order, and they had to pay a lot of money to Monsanto we'll never know how much. Simply because their fields became contaminated. And every year, Monsanto investigates 500 farmers. I just have to say I find that a very living, allegedly knowing history in the United States. I find it to be a very strange place that we're in. But the same thing is we're in a very strange place with the Keystone Pipeline. Why can't Barack Obama and the Democrats say no? It's the wrong thing to do. It's not right. And it's not going to have any good results. They can say it's going to go to China anyway. But, that's China's problem. And that's Canada's problem. We shouldn't contaminate some of the best farmland and the best water aquifer on the planet simply to get some dirty, cheap oil. Obviously, my priorities are slightly different than the Koch brothers and the people that are supporting the Keystone Pipeline. One of the things I just want to return back finally to the importance of family farmers owning the land and farmers owning and saving their seed. For 12,000 years, if not longer, humans have survived by gathering seed and replanting them each year. Practice of saving the best seeds after harvest to improve yields and crop traits has been a time-honored tradition among farmers and agricultural communities long before the birth of the written word. As a result of this simple decision and the billions of choices that have occurred in fields ever since, from the Middle East and Europe to Asia and the Americas, everything that we enjoy today has sprung from the soil and seed that feeds us. For the people in the United States today to be so ignorant of that basic fact, to be so ignorant of where their food comes from, and even worse is our elected officials to be ignorant of that fact, and to allow our heritage and our common heritage to be stolen, the birthright of our democracy and the birthright of civilization to be stolen, it is a great tragedy. I don't know many times if I'm insane for hoping that there will be a better world. I don't know if many times that I should just stop doing this work. What hope is there? They stole the election in 2000. They stole the election in 2004. What hope is there going to be in 2012? And I would just say, I'm 43 years old, so I want to say real quickly, I know that the Republican Party is not going to save us. I find it a very scary thing that in the year 2012, and major presidential candidates are talking about contraceptives, whether contraception for women should be available. I am absolutely frightened for this country. That what is next? Chastity belts? Burkas? Patrol. Seriously, they will steal your liberty. They will extinguish it if you do not stand up. And if we continue to support Democrats that won't stand up and fight for it, you're going to lose anyway. The choice is not between the lesser of two evils. The choice is for the right person at the right time at the right moment. We have to realize that. We have to stop gathering in these rooms. We have to go with pitchforks to their doorsteps. That's the only way we got democracy. I'm just going to say it's the only way we got democracy in the first place, and it's the only way we're going to save it. There are forces of evil out there that want to steal everything from you, and from you and your children. And it is a tragedy. I just want to say one thing in closing. I come from Iowa, and I've seen a lot of corn. You usually see it pile up, either in the field and on a fence, or in these huge piles. And, I had a remarkable experience to take part in a seed swap in New York City at Zuccotti Park, the Occupy Wall Street Farmers March. And I got some seeds. And then 2 weeks ago, we were at Foley Square in New York. Then I had to fly across to California, and I got to take part in another seed swap. And this is remarkably corn. This is called Oaxacan green dent corn. It's grown in Oaxaca, Mexico. It's the birthplace of corn. No one in the Midwest has ever seen a piece of corn like this, unless they've seen it in a picture or a museum. This is what biodiversity represents. If we allow corporations to steal our seeds, we will lose the birthright of our democracy, and we will lose our civilizations. They will own us. These seeds are one of the most important things that have ever taken, that our human species has ever recognized. And we must stand up and fight for them, like you are fighting for the Keystone pipeline. This is absolutely vital. You know, I was actually awed with the beauty of it, and I find that really remarkable. Typically, I'm not a very sentimental individual, but you know, doing this work, you realize you get to stare into the abyss, and you get to realize what's important. And I just hope that together today we can go forward, and we can be committed to reclaiming our democracy and to fighting back. I'm not sure I know the Occupy movement is a very large movement, and it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And there is a lot of hope here because of it. This is not the false hope of a campaign promise. This is the birth and rebirth of a democracy. And we will only save our future if we stand together. Thank you very much.